Okay. Give it a second till we're recording.
We're good to go.
Okay. Okay, brought up the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is the name of the committee. Just basically considering this just because it is such a mouthful. Water, Sewer, Solid Waste, Stormwater Committee. It's, like I say, just kind of a mouthful. If you would consider, I guess, a couple possibilities, could be utilities and solid waste, or solid waste and utilities. Could be utilities and services. However, I guess whatever name you might see fit. How do you feel about renaming the committee to something just a little bit shorter?
I'm all for it. Anything that simplifies that. I've always messed it up now for 2.5 years. I like the utilities idea. What do you think, Henry?
Sure, we just don't deal with electricity. That's the only one, right?
Yep. Yeah, we got we got water, sewer, and stormwater, all utilities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't really deal with gas or power per se.
Yeah, gas and electricity. I don't know. Whatever works. What do we have to do? Send this to? We have to present this council for a change.
I think we probably could rename the committee itself. I could talk to the mayor, since he's the one that actually forms the committee, and he could just basically make a statement under reports, or for that matter, under council reports. We can make it as also.
Yeah, it's a mayoral committee. So, would you mind just dropping some ideas past Mike? You mind,
Sure.
Marissa?
Sure.
I'm having a little hard time hearing.
Do you have a preference in the name?
I don't.
Do you think utilities and stormwater sounds better than stormwater and solid waste and utilities, or utilities and solid waste?
I just don't want to confuse people with thinking that we have anything to do with gas and gas and electricity.
That would be a possibility.
Any way we could acronym in any way?
You could. I guess it'd be SWSW.
Yeah. Well, can we have a little bit more time to think about this?
Sure. Yeah, it's not pressing at all.
Why don't you, Randy, if you can think of something, don't spend a lot of time on it.
Sure. And I really haven't. Just like I say, every time staff, I guess, brings up the committee, it's just kind of a mouthful for us. So we thought
it's a lot to it. So I should have thought about this a little bit more, but I don't know.
What about WSR, just water, sewer, recycle?
Well, it's more than just recycling, because it'd be solid waste too. It could be garbage.
Right. That's an interesting one then. I guess we'll leave it in your hands, Randy.
Okay, I'll speak to the mayor and just see if he has a preference.
Okay.
But I assume it is recommendation of the committee. We'd like to shorten it if possible.
I hate to do this now, but for some reason I have a hard time hearing. I'm going to go get a different speaker. But you can keep going and introduce. It will take me just 20 seconds.
Okay. The next item is College Street Stormwater RFP. And I'm going to let Wayne discuss this. This is basically looking at getting an RFP done to study specifically the College Street Basin.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Quick update where we are. We issued a letter to residents primarily on the south side of College Street on July 31st, letting everyone know our intentions. We've been scheduling meetings, and we have met with, I think, 7 or 8 property owners to date. And we have a series of questions where we're asking all the property owners. I can share that screen with you if you're interested in that. In regards to the flooding they've experienced. And we compile our notes and we are putting this in a database. We're asking everyone to email us pictures, email us videos. We have taken photographs and scanned them and returned them to property owners. We're compiling all the data we can at this stage to gain some traction as we move this issue forward. What we'd like to propose is issuance of requests for proposals from engineers to study this basin. We can do it if a value of the contract is greater than 10,000 but less than 80,000, then we can do it. We can handle this solicitation by issuing an RFP to 2 consultants and evaluate their qualifications and make a decision. Obviously, one of the consultants we will solicit will be AMT. They perform the downtown watershed study for the town, and they obviously have all the background files, everything that's needed to initiate this study. The information that they have legally is ours. Therefore, if we felt that there was a second firm that was more qualified to conduct this study, we would be able to get this digital information from AMT and provide it to the other firm. But that is how we could move this forward. This study has a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts. We expect that the engineer would look at the basin in its entirety, look at the existing facilities that we have, how they discharge to our system, and then look for recommendations for system improvements to address this flooding issue. I'd like to share with you that Mike and I met with probably the one individual we thought would give us the hardest time, which we're prepared for that. That's not uncommon. However, this individual, and I would say just about everyone we've talked to, is so grateful to council for having initiated this. And I wanted you all to know that it's being well received out there, and everyone is grateful for the effort that the town is putting forth to address this. So, we would ask for approval to move forward with an RFP up to as much as $80,000 that we would negotiate a scope and a fee that would be at or below that. Randy, I did chat with Val earlier today to let her know what we're recommending, and she says that fund balance probably can cover this, but we would be looking at as late as, I guess, a budget amendment to address this from a budgeting standpoint. So that's basically where we are at this point. I'm scheduled to give council an update tomorrow evening, and this is primarily the content of that update. I think Randy wants me to be on a fairly regular on the agenda fairly regular to keep council apprised of our progress on this with this project. So I'm open for any questions that you might have.
Wayne, is it up to 80,000 or do you think it's going to be 80,000?
I think the potential exists for it to be close to 80.
Okay. So you feel comfortable up to 80,000?
Yeah, and staff, and I've discussed this with staff, and we feel pretty good with that. And Mike Kelly's on the line here listening. I asked that he participate. He's someone that will be in front of you in the upcoming future. I think I have consensus with staff that we can get it done for 80.
Okay.
The advantage being with AMT is they've got the groundwork done. They have studied this reach of the basin, not in the detail that we're going to be asking for in this regard, with the different pipes coming in from different directions and the potential for modification to existing stormwater basins, for the potential to add a stormwater basin within this drainage shed. It makes there's no one given direct solution to this problem. We're looking for a solution or solutions that will give us the greatest benefit at the least amount of expense.
Right. So council approves this and we fund it. They will give us recommendations that we can put in the budget for next year, or if it's something that we're finding that there's more trouble over and over and over up there, that we can do another budget amendment and go forward with something prior to, right? Excuse me.
Yes.
Am I right about that?
Yes, you are right about that. We didn't discuss how long this study would take. I would guesstimate 4 to 6 months, and I think budgeting for next year is a likely scenario than opposed to moving forward quicker. Some folks have taken down sections of their fence, particularly the Woodrums. They have. Right upstream, I'm just going to tell you, there's been no contact yet with them. And they haven't reached out to us. And I have talked to the realtor, and she wasn't, she didn't want to divulge who the buyer was, and was just kind of tight-lipped about everything, but haven't put the full court press on yet. But I did let her know that whether it's the current owner or the future owner, there's letters coming out, and the property owner at present should have that letter. And I'm not opposed to, not having done it yet, but going down there and putting one in the door. And Randy has also suggested that I might send one to the realtor. The sign is still out there, although leaning up against the fence. I heard it was under contract, but there's no evidence to support that. But regardless, we'll deal with.
Sorry, are we talking about this tomorrow night?
Can't hear you very well.
Sorry, are we talking about this tomorrow night?
Yes.
I was curious, Wayne, when you go up Flieger, you can really see where the creek is right there running through people's homes. And is that something that's going to be looked at as well? Because I think those are tributaries that go down to the Cambria or College Street.
Yes. You're talking Flieger?
Yeah.
We haven't studied that reach directly, although we know that at the intersection of Flieger and 2nd Street, there's a culvert there that is in need of attention
Mhm.
and it needs replacement.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm up there quite often, and I realize that it comes from the interstate down
Right.
that way. And I think that could definitely, I hope that's something that we can point out in the RFP, or they'll know, I'm sure, to go look at what tributaries come into that water system.
Yes, ma'am.
So do we want to include, will they study Flagler too, or do we want to include that?
No, that enters the system, actually coming in by way of Hickok Street, our Hickok Street project currently under design. That's where that stormwater enters the downtown area. So
Okay.
that's coming more from the south, whereas College Street is coming more from the west.
And the Flieger area, there's a lot of inflow and infiltration too. So it's probably, College Street, it's probably more of a pure stormwater, although there is some inflow and infiltration. That really happens everywhere. But Flieger, there's definitely more inflow and infiltration, I believe. Is that probably safe to say?
Yes. Although, as you stated, Randy, it's system-wide.
And that's just normal for any locality, though. You're going to get some water into your sewer system, whether it's through your manhole lids or, just holes in the system.
And improvements have been made in the College Street Basin regarding sanitary sewer. There may be more spot repairs to complete, but that is an ongoing process as well. So basically, where this is not in the budget, we're looking for concurrence to move forward. Staff has even gone so far as to start a draft RFP for that solicitation.
Okay. I appreciate everything you.
Just trying to be proactive.
Mhm.
Be out ahead of the curve.
I have a question, Wayne.
Yes.
So in the 4 to 6 months, once we get this study back, if it passes, what is the next step? Because I can imagine the fix is definitely not a cheap one. What do we have access to that could help us take care of this?
Well, I would think the obvious thing is revenue sharing money from VDOT, similar to how we address the issue in Hans Meadow and how we address the issue over in Cambria at Church, Rigby, Ellett, the flooding pictures I've shared with you.
Mhm.
Our obvious low-hanging revenue source would be revenue sharing through VDOT. We could apply as early as next year about this time.
So an overall ETA, because I can imagine citizens might ask, when can I actually see a change? Or could it be 5 years out?
Yeah, it could be as much as that. We haven't talked about a schedule per se,
Mhm.
not knowing what type of improvements we're looking at. How can these improvements be staged? How could we, I like to say, break it down into smaller bites so we can swallow it? And that's something we'll ask the consultants to do as well, is to phase this. How can we potentially phase it from a budgeting and an engineering perspective, both?
Right. All right. Thank you very much, Wayne. Appreciate that.
Okay.
So do you need a recommendation from the committee then, Randy, to present to council?
I think that'd be desirable.
Henry?
I don't have a problem with it.
I support it as well.
Mhm.
Okay.
I really want, I don't want to see a 5-year project, but what I want and what's reality are two different things. If Wayne, if we can break it up, where we fix a problem over a 5-year period, that's really what I'd be looking at is, projects every year to help those residents out up there.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
I agree. I don't think any of us want to see it take 5 years. It is going to be pretty expensive project and pretty involved though. So,
Not quite knowing what the improvements are at this point. It's hard to project the timeline, given that we haven't completed the preliminary study, but
Well, that's what the study will allow us to do then. So
Yeah.
definitely a recommendation to council, and then council can weigh in on it tomorrow.
Mhm.
I just want, Randy, I just want to thank, and Wayne staff for really being proactive about the issues going on up there. And like Wayne, I think you said that, is that people recognize that and they appreciate it. So it's just not council. It takes buy-in from you guys too, and I appreciate that.
yes, sir. Any more
Ready?
questions regarding College Street?
We ready to move on to Sleepy Hollow?
We can move to Sleepy Hollow.
Okay.
I guess when we initiated discussion regarding College Street, Sleepy Hollow came up. I've got my map up. You want me to share my screen, Randy, just to,
sure. Let me stop sharing this and
all right. And
okay. You can share now.
I can- I don't know if you can see this, but this is Cambria Street. Here's Providence. And this is the rec centers to the recreation centers to the east. Traveling west, you come, here's Sleepy Hollow. And then down at the intersection of Sleepy Hollow and Wooden Shoe, we have a stormwater basin here. And we have 60,000 in the current budget. And I'm told by staff that, and confirmed with Val, that this is currently still in the budget. 60,000 to study this reach right here. And this RFP would, the intent here is to be out ahead of SLAF funding that we might be able to go after, which, like revenue sharing, is a 50-50 funding program, but is through DEQ rather than VDOT. But also what we want to study is this stormwater basin down here at the foot of the hill. It has, back in 2015, with that big 1,000-year flood we had, this stormwater basin overtopped. Not only did the spillway was functioning fully, but it overtopped the dam itself. And that's concerning. This basin was constructed in accordance with the regulations in effect at the time, probably 20 years ago. We didn't observe the dam construction. A little concerned about the stability of and the liability associated with that embankment. And this study would push that project forward, both studying the basin and this drainage channel behind these homes. Here we are again behind homes. I don't know if you've noticed behind here when you drive up Sleepy Hollow, but that channel flows behind the homes. And I'm sure there's been times when it's been it's been inundated. And I think similar to the process we're following on College Street, I think on this basin and the impact to these homes and these families are pretty much a bit more defined. So we have a limited number of interviews to make here, but I would offer up the same approach to this issue on Sleepy Hollow by interviewing the homeowners at the same time that we're doing our field reconnaissance. But again, this is in the budget, and through this RFP solicitation, we just want to gain benefit of pushing both projects forward at the same time, and working and issuing this project to a consultant to conduct this study as well.
Is this just FYI, Wayne, since this is already in the budget, or Randy, do we need council approval or recommendation from us?
Since it is, budget related, I think, it's worth consideration, basically. And it comes down to, I guess, to some degree, prioritization also.
I'd say move forward with this. This is a study much like the College Street, right, Wayne?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I take it this map that you have, this area pretty much flows into that eventually, right?
Yeah, this is receiving stormwater from Cambria Crossing. Kind of breaks right there at the park and drains the back of the park, the south side of the park, at the property line, really. Everything drains this way and crosses under Wooden Shoe and Sleepy Hollow to this basin, flows under Cameo and under Independence to the Diamond Hills stream restoration area.
Okay. Well, my feeling, I mean, the Cameo's has had its issue in the past down there off Sleepy Hollow. So, and now it's the prevention and it's already in the budget. And I mean, if you need a recommendation again to come from us, I'm willing to support it. How about you, Marissa?
I would as well. I think that we've definitely learned a lesson on drainage, and it's important to be on top of it as much as we can do it and afford.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. That's all I have, Randy.
Thanks, Wayne.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you both.
I guess you'll stop sharing and I'll bring the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the per and polyfloral alkaline substances discussion. Marissa brought this to our attention. Basically, these are residues from plastics manufacture. No, DuPont is kind of a typical company associated with this. I think it's also associated with a manufacturer of a lot of stains, things like that. It is, I guess, potentially a health hazard, although it's something that's not tested for, although right now it's not regulated by state or federal testing. As I understand it, the authority doesn't necessarily have a good way to test for it, although they're researching that. I know that the authority, I think, would probably prefer to only test for things that are actually regulated, but I guess they'd be open to the consideration. Of course, Wayne serves on the board there, and we've got Jim and Don Cole. Don manages our wastewater treatment plant and is basically superintendent of utilities also. So in regards to our testing at our plant, or if you have any specific questions about testing, I think Don could probably answer them better than I can. Right now, the way it stands is that we've asked Caleb from the Water Authority to look at this and just consider it for future consideration. From what I could tell is he planned on testing for it if it were regulated, but probably not if it weren't regulated by the state.
Overall, I think it's a very scary concept that EPA does not regulate roughly 80,000 chemicals that DuPont produces. So I'm kind of I'm on the fence on this one because I understand if they don't regulate it and we do find it, then what do we do type of situation? And what would it take to attempt to have a filter so our residents aren't drinking this? And sadly, the way they change the chemicals too, they take one little itty bitty little part and modify it, call it something else, then all of a sudden it's not C8 anymore. It's very scary to me, so I mean, I'd like some feedback from the professionals, like, Dawn, how do you feel about the EPA not regulating this? Even though DuPont was fined a massive amount of money to clean it up, and this is only in West Virginia, what do we do?
I can tell you, I guess, upstream, we have done upstream threat analysis to our intake, basically looking at things that could lead into our water intake. And of course, it's upstream, or it is upstream from our sewer intake. But we actually put the water back cleaner than it comes out, just for reference. We did not find any potential source for PFAS in the area. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that it couldn't be there, but we don't know of any potential sources for it that we saw on the upstream analysis.
Okay. I mean, that does make me feel a little bit better. How do you feel about it, Henry?
Well, I think, again, I mean, with us testing upstream, Brandy, I don't know how, I mean, do we have a percentage on how sure we are we're not getting these in our water supply, or?
Unless you tested for them, I couldn't really tell you whether they're there or not.
How often do we test?
We don't test for PFAS. It's not a regulated substance, so we don't test for it. We only test for things that are regulated by state or federal requirements.
Hey, Randy.
Yes.
We didn't test for this upstream. Sorry, Jim.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Hey, Don has a little bit more background, because when we researched this, when Marissa brought it up, we actually, in our UCMR 3s, I believe it was in 2015, but Don can get more specific with it. That was part of our testing. I'll let him chime in here and explain to you what we're talking about with that.
Thanks, Jim. So in 2013, hang on a second. Sorry about that. I had some feedback. So in 2013, as part of the unregulated contaminants testing protocol, two of the things that we did test for were PFOA and PFOS. We tested for them at 6 sites within our drinking water system, and the thresholds were 0.02 parts per billion for PFOA and 0.04 parts per billion for PFOS. And in every one of the samples that were taken in 2013, we were below that threshold. We were undetectable.
Are you saying that 0.02 is considered undetectable in the drinking water?
So the test method that they used during the 2013 UCMR 3 was EPA 537. The lowest detectable range under the EPA 537 method was 0.02 for PFOA and 0.04 for PFOS. Doesn't mean it was undetectable. It just means it was not detectable by that method.
everything that I've read, 1 part per billion is dangerous. Have you found that as well?
Yes, the EPA health recommendation that was released in 2016 recommends a combined total between PFA and PFOA of 70 parts per trillion. And that's if your water is coming in at 70 parts per trillion, you should be able to drink that amount of, or that level of contamination for a lifetime without having negative medical consequences.
And the other number that you gave us was per billion?
Per
So-
billion, yes.
Okay.
The UCMR3 was in 2013, and the EPA health recommendation or health advisory was in 2016.
And 2016 is a little bit closer to when DuPont actually got, in trouble. So just my 2 cents, Randy, and whoever's on here. I probably would like to add a request to add in this testing if we can. Highly suggest it, and see how our numbers have changed since 2016.
Can we still assume we can still get those tests, and how expensive are they to conduct?
So I did a little research on that. I didn't specifically price out the EPA 537 method because I think that may be an older method at this point. And I'm not even sure that that is the standard method that they're using right now. But the isotopic method, which is what they're recommending to me, is about $350 per individual sample. And that's before shipping, and we'll have to ship it. Depending upon the hold time, shipping could be equally as much as the test itself.
Am I missing something as to why that might be so expensive?
Not from my perspective.
Most of our water quality tests run into the hundreds for pretty much any test. I think that's probably right, isn't it, Don?
Yes.
Probably even a basic test is probably $150.
I was concerned about the shipping being possibly as much as the test, but $350.
I've experienced that. Some of the tests that we've done in the past have hold times of 24 hours or less. And so you have to pay extra to FedEx or UPS to get it there. And it has to be maintained at a certain temperature.
Okay, I understand that part now. Thank you for that clarification.
Hey,
So-
Don,
Go ahead.
this testing is on the review panel now for the number 5s, right? They're considering this round of testing to add this to it?
That's correct. The PFOAs, some additional testing for them were on the UCMR4 big list, which was 97 some odd contaminants, and they selected something about 25 or 26 for UCMR4. And then the UCMR5 committee that they're putting together right now is going to be looking at it again. But there's no guarantee it's going to make it on the short list.
If it is mandated, how long would it take effect till the testing requirement takes effect?
We just finished UCMR4 testing in May of last year, and the rules for UCMR4 came out in something around 2017. So it takes, once the rule comes out for the testing for UCMR5, we can look for 12 to 18 months before we have to test for that. And then one thing to bear in mind, with all of this testing, no regulations have come out of it, even as far back as UCMR3. We have to go back to UCMR2 before we start seeing some regulations that have come out of it.
The testing locations you picked, did you pick near master meters? How did you decide on locations?
Looks like mostly entry points where the water samples are entering the town system.
So near our master meters, basically.
That's correct.
Mr. Cole, can you tell me what UCMR stands for? Do you know that acronym?
Let's see if I can get this right. Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule. The EPA is mandated by Congress to develop a list of new contaminants to study at intervals of 5 to 6 years throughout the lifetime of the EPA. And UCMR 4, the one that we just finished, was the 4th iteration of that. And now we're getting ready to go into 5.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So if we do move forward with this, my recommendation would be that Public Works put in their budget for next year, work up a testing for the next fiscal year. But here's my question: if you do find some irregularities in it, what can we do?
They do have guidelines for treatment. Or I don't think there are guidelines, specific guidelines for treatment. You can probably find, I guess, kind of unofficial guidance, I'm assuming, Don? Or do some states regulate this?
California has started regulating, of course.
What guidelines do they have for treatment?
So with respect to the recommendation, the advisory of 70 parts per trillion, California in January of this year decreased the levels to a notification level of 14 parts per trillion for PFOA and 13 parts per trillion for PFOS. Oh, they reduced it. So now they're at 5.1 and 6.5. And their combined total before a response is 40 parts per trillion.
Mm-hmm.
But now to treat this, they're recommending some really what we would call cutting edge or leading technology treatment methods for drinking water, such as granulated activated carbon, microfiltration, reverse osmosis.
Okay. Hey, do you think instead of us taking this whole expense, since this is we're talking about the meters for our intake for the water authority, right?
Yes.
Do you think you guys could discuss with town of Blacksburg and Montgomery County about us, if we handle the task sending it off and we provide them the results back, since this is our water, meaning Montgomery County, Blacksburg, and even Virginia Tech, do you think you guys could reach out to see if they would help us with this expense for next year?
They may, or I was just kind of wondering, do we approach that subject at the board level just to see if the authority itself would
Sponsor it? Yeah, I would
Yeah.
recommend Wayne take this to them.
I would too.
I can do that this month's meeting.
It might not be a full-blown testing program. It might just be a kind of a one-time test at certain points, just to see kind of what levels are.
And I would like to see it, and Wayne, when you present it, this is really something I would think that we'd want every 2 to 4 years, not 2013. That was almost 7 years ago. So I would think we would want the water authority to sponsor these type of tests, or whatever new tests are out. Pretty much, I'd like to see them adopt a policy, if they would, about testing for this every 2 years, just to make sure, our water, this is a serious threat to, the carcinogens that are in there. I think it's something that the authority could be justified in expenditure in this testing, in my opinion.
I'm sorry. No, you go, ma'am.
I absolutely agree with you, Henry. It is a concern. And at this point, it's anybody who may have read up on the links that I had sent. Granted, everybody wants to save money, but I think this is an area, Wayne, when you present this to the authority, this is health of our citizens. And, like Randy said, not just us. I want to check on this for Blacksburg and Montgomery County, and heck, maybe even encourage other people when we sit and have our meetings to do the same, because this is highly serious. And what concerns me is that DuPont almost got away with this, and it's killing people. And that lets me know how powerful they are with the governments and the EPA. They got a slap on the wrist, and it was a very hefty fine, but we don't see that fine, yet it got into the whole water system in the whole country. That's the part that disturbs me, is that they got a class action lawsuit, paid the money, which wasn't even as much as what they make off of Teflon in a year. So that, even though to us it's a lot of money, to them it wasn't. And they're still allowed to do it. So this is my concern, and I want everybody to understand this, is that C8 now has a C1 through C13, and the C8 is the only one that was sued for. So should we be concerned about C9, 10, and 11, etc.? I think we should. So I don't know much about how the PFOA testing is done, Wayne, but if we could find out how much of a spectrum that covers, for example, the C8 situation versus changing it to C7. I want to make sure we can catch as many of those in the test as possible. Because I'm just, if I could slap the EPA right now, I would. I don't think they did anybody, the whole country, a justice with this. And DuPont is still allowed to produce these chemicals with small changes, damaging our complete water system. So maybe we even want to reach out to Huntington, West Virginia, local government, and find out what they did to fix the problem.
Marissa, you're on our regional commission, right?
Oh yeah, I definitely am going to be bringing this up.
I would think a petition to the state about, these concerns should come from the regional commission. That would have all your major players in our region, Giles, Pulaski, Lloyd, all the towns, Montgomery. I mean, that's a powerful message you're sending to Richmond. We can say, well, what if this, what if that, but it takes state regulation, which supersedes whatever we put out there or what we want to do. That's what I would encourage you to pursue it that way. And Kevin Bird's a great representative for you guys, and could really sort of steer how you want to approach this, how you want to take on this campaign, and any support you need from, I'm sure, council will be able to support that.
Yeah, I definitely planned on it. There was a delay in meeting this last month for vacations, etc. So we're going to pick it back up at the end of this month. So that is definitely on my agenda to bring up.
Now I will call Caleb and get this added to the Water Authority board meeting agenda for the end of the month.
All right. Thank you, Wayne.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Like Henry said, you might maybe just suggest that they set up a program for it, whether it's test every 2 years or every 4 or every 5. I guess kind of depending on, who knows, it might be regulated in a year or two anyhow.
Right.
True.
Very good.
And thanks, Don. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. I appreciate all the information.
Anytime.
Guess, are we done with this item then? Guess I'll just provide you an update on a couple things. Public Works has been keeping an eye on the trash can downtown, and we haven't had any other issues with the trash can by the post office. as far as household garbage being dumped there. So at least over the last several weeks, we haven't had an issue.
That's good. How are we on this? Are they still predicting that Horatio to come through tonight?
To be honest, I haven't kept a good track on the weather myself. I usually get weather updates from the state, and I haven't really gotten much. So I'm kind of assuming I don't think it's going to be as bad as maybe the Horatio per se.
Horatio, that's a couple years ago. Okay.
Of course, we're probably going to be getting still some rain from the hurricane.
Hmm.
Any other items? Anything you'd like to discuss for future consideration?
I don't at this time. I think I've thrown a big enough elephant on the plate.
I don't either. I appreciate everybody taking the time to be here tonight.
Sure.
Hey, Randy, I have one thing.
Okay.
I wanted to let Henry and Marissa know. Dawn and I will be working on a presentation pertaining to the wastewater treatment facility, maybe at the next meeting, and present it to you guys on where we're at with that and what we're looking at for the future as far as the maintenance and operations of the facility.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Don. All right. So if nothing else, we're adjourned. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Oh, see you, Travis.